All right. Hey, good evening, everyone. Hey, welcome to Campus Church Oak Bay. If you're able to, invite you to stand as we begin to worship this evening. We're starting to break into the Christmas songs. I'm so excited. I love Christmas music so much. Yeah. Let earth receive her King. Father. It's who you are. It's who you are. It's who you are, and I'm loved by you. It's who I am. It's who I am. It's who I am. Love so far and wide, but I know we're all searching for answers. You provide, 'cause you know just what we need before we say a word. You're good, good Father. It's who you are. It's who you are. It's who you are, and I'm loved by you. It's who I am. It's who I am. It's who I am. You're a good, good Father. It's who you are. It's who you are. It's who you are, and I'm loved by you. It's who I am. It's who I am. It's who I am. You are perfect in all of your ways. You are perfect in all of your ways. You are perfect in all of your ways. To love. You are perfect in all of your ways. You are perfect in all of your ways. You are perfect in all of your ways. To love. And love so undeniable, I can hardly speak. Please, so unexplainable, I can hardly think as you call me. Deeper still as you call me. Deeper still as you call me. Deeper still into love, love, love. You're good, good Father. It's who you are. It's who you are. It's who you are, and I'm loved by you. It's who I am. It's who I am. It's who I am. You're good, good Father. It's who you are. It's who you are. It's who you are, and I'm loved by you. It's who I am. It's who I am. It's who I am. You're perfect in all your ways. You are perfect in all of your ways. You are perfect in all of your ways. You are perfect in all of your ways. To us again, you're perfect. You are perfect in all of your ways. You are perfect in all of your ways. You are perfect in Father God, you are good. We declare that together, Lord. Proclaim your goodness, Lord. Thank you that we can just find our identity in you, Lord. We are your sons and daughters, Lord. We can boldly come before you in worship, Lord. Thank you for that truth, Lord. Come, Emmanuel, and ransom captive Israel that mourns in lonely exile until the Son of God appears. Rejoice, Emmanuel shall come to thee, O Israel. Oh, come, O Son of God, Most High, deliver us from sinfulness and pride, restoring us a childlike heart, to consecrate and set us apart. Rejoice, rejoice, Emmanuel, your Israel. Oh come, Emmanuel, oh come. Oh come, Emmanuel. Oh come, Emmanuel. Oh come, Emmanuel. Come, O Savior of this world, the long-awaited promise you foretold, the right, the wrongs that man has done. We pray your glorious kingdom come. Rejoice, rejoice, Emmanuel shall come to thee, O Israel. Rejoice, 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 Emmanuel shall as I rise, the strength of God go before, lift me up as I wait. Eyes of God look upon my side as I wait. Heart of God, satisfied and sustained as I hear voice of God. Lead me on, be my guide, be my guide, above and below me, before and behind me, in every eye that sees me. Christ be all around me, above and below me, before and behind me, in every eye that sees me. Christ be all around me, as I go, hand of God, my defense, my side, as I rest, breath of God fall upon, bring me peace, above and below me, before and behind me, in every eye that sees me. Christ be all around me, above and below me, before and behind me, in every eye that sees me. Christ be all around me, yeah. Oh, Christ be all around me, yeah. Christ be all around me, yeah. Your life, your death, your blood was shed for every moment, your life, your death, your blood was shed for every moment, your life, your death, your blood was shed for every moment, every eye that sees us, Lord. Pray that your presence, Lord, your Spirit would just be so in us, so near us, that the people that see us would be able to see you. Father, in this time, in this Christmas season, it's all about you coming to us, you drawing near to us. So thank you for that. Thank you for that truth, Lord. And I pray that you would continue to draw near to us, that we would just know your presence, know your goodness, know your faithfulness, Lord, in Jesus' name. Amen. Amen. You can take a seat.
Wow, thank you guys. I love seeing talented guys like this use their talents for the glory of God.
Even if they screw up the words.
Even when they forget the words, because it happens to the best of them. It's beginning to look a lot like Christmas. We've been setting up in here since early, but I heard that over on the avenue there was a lot of Christmas stuff going on, and so I think my boys got to go over there and check it out as they turned all the Christmas lights on. And it's November, but it's never too early to start getting Christmassy. And so really glad that you're here tonight. We're Canvas Church. Some of you have been here before, some of you have not been here before. Everybody comes from somewhere with a story, and so we're grateful that your story brought you here, that we're part of that. And Canvas Church is really about four things that everything we do is filtered through. Would be Jesus, relationships, families, and our community. We want our community to be different because we're here, right? Jesus said to be salt and to be light, to preserve those things which are good and to be light in the midst of darkness, those things that are not good. And so as a church, that's what we want to be. And so we've been conducting preview services for the last year, meeting once a month. And the idea of these services is for people to be able to come and to get a little bit of an idea of who we are, what we're all about. And then early in 2019, we're excited to be officially launching every week and be much more regular. But we're thankful for what God has already done in the past year, and there's a lot of stories to tell of that. If you're interested in any of those, would love to share all those with you. So please connect with me afterwards. God's at work, not just in Oak Bay, but in Victoria and on Vancouver Island. And we're so excited that when God's at work, He invites people to be a part of that. And what greater joy could there be than to join your Creator in what He's doing in your time, the time that you are here. God is at work, and so we're excited. We've been in a teaching series for the last little bit. We called "What Is," and I should have it. Let's see if I got it here. Yes, what is? Seeking answers to life's big questions. And so we've been trying to ask questions that are not just, maybe simple questions, yes or no, true or false, those type questions. We want to look at questions because I think questions are a good thing, and I think that's how you grow, that's how you learn. Yes, questions. The Christian faith is definitely not a blind faith. It's a faith that I believe invites you to go deeper, it invites you to ask questions, and so that's what we've been trying to do, is to ask questions that are significant. And being that it is the Christmas season, may not feel like it because it's November, but because of all the lights and stuff on Oak Bay Ave, it's like, well, let's just go ahead and get to Christmas. And so we want to ask, what is Christmas? Right? What's the big deal about this thing called Christmas? Because everybody seems to go nuts for this thing. And we took our boys to the parade downtown last night. Was that just last night? Yeah. 1.5 million Santa Clauses and lights and trucks, and it was amazing. But people get into the Christmas season when it comes around. and even before it comes around, like in November. And so we want to ask, what is Christmas? and what value does that have for a Christian? Because a lot of people come at Christmas from different angles. We want to ask, what's the big deal about Christmas? What is behind it? And I was asking myself even in the last week or so, why do we even celebrate it on December 25th? Like why do we do this? Because for Christians, it's one of our biggest holidays. And so why December 25th? Well, there's a lot of history behind all of this, but the short version is the earliest mention of Christmas as an established feast was 336 AD. So a lot of years ago, and officially declared on December 25th by 385 by Pope Julius I. So it was officially declared that, all right, December 25th is when Christians are going to start celebrating Christmas, and then from there, people just started doing it. It was widely believed many years ago that Jesus died on March 25th. And as there was a couple of scholars that were trying to figure it out, and nobody really knows, but they said, well, if he died around Passover and this and that, and they tried to figure it out and said, well, March 25th is our date. But at that time, Jewish tradition believed that really important spiritual figures died on the same date that they were born on. It was kind of this thing that was believed, and so if Moses lived 120 years, they would believe that Moses lived exactly 120 years. So he died on his birthday. Kind of a bummer to go out on your birthday. But so they decided, well, so if Jesus died on March 25th, then he must have been born on March 25th. And then another thinker came along and said, well, but what if he was conceived on March 25th? And then 9 months later, he was born. What if we're getting this wrong? And so thus, 9 months after March 25th, they came to December 25th, and people just started saying, well, let's go with December 25th. The truth is we don't really know when, right? Nobody knows for sure. When was Jesus actually born? And the truth is that it doesn't really matter. The fact that he was born is what matters. And so we celebrated on the 25th, but the nativity and the story behind Christmas has a lot of significance in the Christian faith. Whether we celebrate it on December 25th or choose some random time to celebrate it, it's something important. And over the years, a lot has been added to it, right? There's a lot of traditions, a lot of things that have been piled onto the Christmas season. Sometimes the nativity can seem to get lost in all of the other things, the gifts and the Christmas trees and all these other things. And those things aren't necessarily bad. But it's fascinating that even Hollywood kind of gets this, right? You notice during the Christmas season, there's a ton of commercials for stuff. Like, you need to get this for a gift for your mom or your dad. Or it's all these commercials saying all these great gifts, but you don't see very many Hallmark Christmas movies about that, right? The perfect gift. Got to go out and buy all this material stuff. It's funny because even Hollywood understands that there's something deeper underneath all of this, which is why you see themes of friendship or giving. You see things like Scrooge learning that it's not all about the stuff. It's about something much more. And so even non-Christian Christmas movies and Christmas shows that are on TV stand in stark contrast to the commercials, because people realize there's something deeper beneath all of this. And they might not know exactly what it is, but there's this sense that there is something. And so I want to take you to part of the Christmas story. You can find it in the beginning of the book of Matthew, in the beginning of the book of Luke. But the book of Matthew sort of takes the Christmas story from Joseph's perspective. It tells a little bit of his story. And Luke tells it a little bit more from Mary's side. So next month we're going to look into Luke at Mary's side. But look at this at the beginning of Matthew. It says, "Now the birth of Jesus Christ took place in this way. When his mother Mary had been betrothed to Joseph, before they came together, she was found to be with child from the Holy Spirit. And her husband Joseph, being a just man and unwilling to put her to shame, resolved to divorce her quietly. But as he considered these things, behold, an angel of the Lord appeared to him in a dream, saying, Joseph, son of David, do not fear to take Mary as your wife, for that which is conceived in her is from the Holy Spirit. And she will bear a son, and you shall call his name Jesus, for he will save his people from their sins. And all this took place to fulfill what the Lord had spoken by the prophet. Behold, the virgin shall conceive and bear a son, and they shall call his name Emmanuel, which means God with us. When Joseph woke from sleep, he did as the angel of the Lord commanded him. He took his wife, but knew her not until she had given birth to a son, and he called his name Jesus. Joseph's put in kind of an interesting position. To be betrothed to somebody in those days was essentially to be married to them. It had almost all the aspects of marriage, to the point where if you broke off the engagement, you would have to go through the process of divorce. And so engagement, to be betrothed to somebody, they were essentially already married, and then he finds out that she's pregnant. And there's been some critics of this. One of the biggest critics of just religion in general was David Hume. He's a philosopher, and he criticized miracles. And he's famous for saying that typically only barbarous nations, barbarians, are people who believe in miracles. And so he would look at something like the virgin birth and say, is it more probable that somebody made this up? Sorry, I'm choking on something. Or is it more probable that a miracle happened? And he would say, it's more probable that somebody made it up. Right? It's more probable because virgins don't give birth. Virgins don't get pregnant, and so you should go with probability here and assume that somebody is lying. And so a lot of times people will criticize the Bible and say, well, these people were what David Hume said, is they're barbarous, they're barbarians. So he would say, like a guy like Joseph, oh yeah, he just sort of goes along with it. These people in the Bible. The thing is that that's not how Joseph responds, right? Joseph has the opposite reaction. He's saying, wait a sec, if I'm not the father of this child, then that means my wife has been unfaithful to me. His first reaction is not to believe that it's a miracle. It's actually the opposite, is to believe that something else is going on here. And I love that because it just shows the authenticity of the story. It's not just Joseph saying, okay, of course this must be happening. You're pregnant, honey? Well, it must be the Holy Spirit. That's not his first reaction. Okay, yeah, Holy Spirit, that makes sense. Because no, I'm going to file for divorce because something's going on. And then he gets this visit from the angel, and then he starts to accept that something is happening here that is not foul play. Christmas teaches Joseph and us something amazing. That God came to us. And maybe we've heard the Christmas story several times, and so it doesn't seem as amazing to us, but that is so countercultural to every religion before and after. That God would come to us. This is radically different from any other understanding of God. I want to tell you a story to show what that means. Some of you guys know Daryl Sutter, know of Daryl Sutter. He was the coach of the Calgary Flames for a long time, and I grew up just outside of Calgary. And so I remember when Daryl Sutter came to Calgary, and he helped the Calgary Flames go from a bad team to a good team. And anytime that happens, a coach becomes very popular. And so Daryl Sutter comes to town, and all of a sudden the Flames are not terrible anymore. And so he becomes all of our heroes. And all of a sudden we're like, Daryl Sutter, this guy, he's just a celebrity in town. And at the time, I'm about 19 years old. I'm working at a Tim Hortons, and in a little town just north of Calgary. And I'm working at Tim Hortons, and then all of a sudden, one sleepy Saturday, Daryl Sutter and his family walks into Tim Hortons. And we're all just like, is that what do I think it is? It's like, yeah, there's no confusing Daryl Sutter. All the Sutters, there's like a bunch of brothers, they all look like Sutters. And it's like, that's Daryl Sutter. And so we start scrambling, like, we're going to serve our hero. And I'm over in the section like making sandwiches and doing all that stuff. And so Daryl Sutter comes up and he starts ordering with his family. And I'm just like starstruck. I don't do well around celebrities. Get a little starstruck. Sarah and I one time were flying out of LA, Los Angeles, and we're walking down the airplane aisle, and we stop as people are putting their stuff up, and I look beside me, and Jack Black is like sitting in first class. I don't know if you know who Jack Black is, but Kung Fu Panda. He's the voice of Kung Fu Panda, and many other things. And I was like, "It's Jack Black right there." He's like right beside me, Jack Black. And so Sarah like leans over, "Excuse me, Mr. Jack Black. My son or my husband's freaking out over here because he's a big fan, and he does sort of that Jack Black eyebrow thing, like, oh yeah, like I was like, well, yeah, I loved you in Kung Fu Panda." I was like, all right, and then the line mercifully kept going. So I don't do well around celebrities, and so there's Daryl Sutter ordering, and I'm gonna make his order. I'm just like, it has to be perfect. And so he orders a chili. And so I'm like making all this chili, trying to make it perfect. I get it all in this nice bag and everything. It's all perfect. I set it up on the counter and just sort of wait for him to get there. And he shows up and he says, "Oh, we're actually eating in. It's supposed to be for here." So sorry, I grab it. I give the person taking the order this like evil eye, like, come on, to go or to stay, like push the right button, making me look like an idiot in front of my hero. And so I'm spilling stuff, like there's chili going everywhere, trying to make it all nice. And I give it to him. He's waited for a little while at this point, and then they go and sit off in the side, and the whole time, like I'm not working. The orders are just backing up on the screen, and I'm just looking over like, and like, is it good? Like, does he like it? Like, is he spitting it out or something? Like, how's this going? And so he's about finishing up, and I'm just like, man, this is so cool. And then somebody's like, well, Mike, like, did you get his autograph? Like, you're probably not going to have this chance again. Did you get his autograph? No. And so he's on his way out with his family, and I stop him. I'm like, Mr. Sutter, yeah, what can I do for you? I was like, can I get your autograph? Sure, you can have my autograph. Do you have a pen and paper? I'm just like, looking around, like, no. It's like, wait right here. Like, there's nothing. It's like you're tripping over pen and paper when you don't need it, and then all of a sudden you need it, and it's like, there's like a pen and paper drought. And there's nothing. And so I run back into the kitchen, and they're all working, and I just like bring everything to a halt. I'm just like, all of you stop. Like, for the love of all that you hold dear. Like, I need a pen and paper right now. And thankfully, me and the baker, she was awesome. Her name was Ruth. She just sort of grabs a pen and and I do the whole like grab the pen, grab the paper, run back out there. And it's just a Tim Hortons to-go bag. And so and then the whiteboard marker that we write like the schedule on. And so he writes his autograph. Yeah, Dave loves it because you hang out with hockey players all the time. I'm not as cool as you are around that. And so he signs this bag, and for the longest time, I brought it home into my room, and I tacked it onto my wall. I had Daryl Sutter's autograph on a Tim Hortons bag in my room. And it's funny because throughout that whole disastrous encounter, nobody would say that I actually know Daryl Sutter, or that Daryl Sutter knows me. If you were to ask him today, hey, you know Mike Blackaby? He'd be like, no. Who's that? Right? And if you were to say, hey, Mike, tell me about Daryl Sutter. Like, are you guys close? I can maybe tell you some of his stats. I can tell you some things about him, but I don't really know him, right? He's a celebrity that I had placed on a pedestal, and I don't know him, and he doesn't know me. That was religion leading up to Christmas. That's how people viewed God, is that God was some sort of a celebrity, and you would come to God and you would do things for him to try and get noticed, but you didn't know him, and he didn't really know you either. You would make sacrifices, or you would try to do something to appease him, but nobody really knew their gods or believed that their gods really knew them. You know what it was like? It was like this. Remember Wizard of Oz? What's their reaction when they go see the Wizard of Oz? It's this. They come up to the Wizard of Oz and they're terrified. And they say, these are some requests that we have. And then the wizard says, you need to first go and do these tasks, and then come back to me, and maybe I will grant you your requests. That was the view of God, is that you somehow try to bridge that gap to him by doing things, by entering his presence in some sort of trepidation and not really being known by him or ever knowing, always being this distance. Which is why when Christmas tells us that God comes to us, that God takes on flesh in the form of Jesus and comes to earth to be born just like we're born, to struggle just like we struggle, to go through life and to experience hunger and to experience betrayal and to experience sorrow and also to laugh and to experience good times. But God bridging that gap to come to us, this was such a radically different picture of God that it's understandable that people were shocked by it. How could this be true? How could God come to us in the form of a baby? So how did he come? Well, the Jewish people of that time expected something different. They expected some sort of Messiah to come as really a political warrior that would come and deliver them from the Romans through military strength. And that's what they were hoping for, that one day God will send this Redeemer, this Messiah that will come and will boot the Romans out and put us in power, and we'll have this warrior king will come. They didn't expect him to come as a baby. Instead, God comes in the form of a humble baby, Emmanuel, God with us. Not just God above us, not God looking down on us from somewhere far up there in the heavens, but God coming to dwell among us, to take his place among us. This is central to the entire message of Christianity, that God desired a relationship with us, came down to our level. But there was a problem. The problem was sin. Sin that separates us from a holy God. A holy God that comes to us, but for a purpose. Just like sin divides us from each other, sin divides us from God, right? What gets in the way of relationships when you try to have a healthy relationship with somebody? It's not all the good stuff. It's not when you're doing everything right. It's not when you're both acting with integrity. And sin is what comes in to destroy any relationship. And so what might that do to our relationship to a holy God? If sin destroys our imperfect relationships with each other, how much more does sin destroy our relationship to a God who is holy? It's irreparable. And if God was to be with us, he was to have to come and deal with the problem. Right? God with us involves God doing something about the problem. So why did he come? Why Christmas? Because we can talk a lot about the fact of Christmas, but why? Why Christmas? The angel says that Jesus would save his people from their sins. He came for a purpose. It wasn't just that God got bored one day and said, it would be a cool story? Christmas story. Let's do it this way. He said, no, there's a problem that needs to be fixed if I'm to be in relationship again with people. So Jesus comes to save people from their sins. A few weeks ago, on Oak Bay Ave, they closed down the avenue on October 31st to do a big trick-or-treating event. And as a church, we had the opportunity to set up some tents and to have some games there, and just had hundreds of people come by and hear about who we are. We're new in this area. A lot of people don't even know who we are. And so just this great opportunity for hundreds of people to come, play games, get some prizes, laugh as a family. The community was doing this. And we said, hey, one of our core values is community. Another one of our core values is families. If the community is bringing families together, we can find some common ground on that. We want to be part of that. And so had a great time. But there's hundreds of people on the avenue. I mean, probably similar to what it was like tonight, just all these people, and we had our kids with us. They were trick-or-treating and having a good time. They're cute, a little Captain Hook and a little Peter Pan running around. And then there was this moment where we turned around and we realized in a split second when we weren't watching, our 2-year-old, Luca, took off. And if you're a parent, you've probably had that experience. This was the first experience like that we've had. And all of a sudden, we can't see Luca anywhere. And you're looking around like, oh, I'm sure he's just snuck off and he's just over there, and we can't find Luca anywhere. And so all of a sudden, like, start panicking a little bit. And I was doing one of the games, and I just put one of the stools in front of it and said, all right, game's closed for right now. I got to go find my son. And me and Sarah, we take off, and we start running up and down the avenue trying to find Luca, and we can't find him. And of course, the whole episode was maybe 15 minutes, 10 minutes, but it felt like hours. When you can't find your kid, and at first you're thinking like, okay, he'll just be around the corner somewhere, he'll be there, and when you don't find him, and time keeps going, and I'm not getting a call from Sarah, I know she hasn't found him, I know I haven't found him, then you start worrying. All these people in costumes, all these crowds, people going in and out of businesses, and the scary thing for us was the end of the street, right where they ended off at Monterey Ave tonight. There's still traffic going by, and we know how fast and little Luca is to just dart out into traffic before anybody would even see him or even be able to stop him. And we just start getting worried. And Sarah goes to the police right in the middle of the street and says, "We've lost our 2-year-old. What do we need to do?" And what was really cool was all these other moms. I think that the mom radar went up and realized there's a mom in distress, and about 5 ladies came and said, what's going on, how can we help? And showed them a picture of Luca. Says, he looks like this, but he's dressed like Peter Pan. And they go off. And right when I make my way back to the police, we see this lady come back with Luca. Found him, he had gone all the way to the complete other end of the street. And so we gathered together, big family hug, and just, wow, so glad that we were able to find him again. See, he was fine, at least he thought he was. He wasn't crying, he was just running back, exploring the avenue. He actually had no idea what kind of danger he was in. He didn't realize why the streets were blocked off. He didn't realize that there was traffic. For all he knew, he was fine. Didn't know what the big deal was. And he didn't have the ability to get back to us. That's the other thing, is he didn't have the ability to stop and think, oh, if I just go to the police, or if I just do this, or he was helpless. And so, out of our love for him, it sprung us to action. We realize he's in trouble. He can't find his way to us. So we've got to go to him. Guys, that's the Christmas story, right? God looking at his children, realizing they're in trouble. There's a big problem here, and most of them don't even realize how serious it is. They don't even realize the consequences of sin. They don't even know the predicament that they're in. And so out of my love, we sang tonight, you're a good, good father. Because of my fatherly love for them, I will go after them. I will take the initiative, even before they realize they need to take the initiative to get back to me. It's an amazing, amazing picture of God that is different than any religion that came before, any religion that came after. And even though it goes against everything that Joseph prior to this understood on his own, it says he considered these things, right? Before he acts, it says he considered these things. And he still didn't come to the conclusion that God was at work. It says he considered these things, and then he was going to divorce Mary. And then God comes in and gives him the truth. And says, actually, God's at work here. God is going to do something here that will save people from their sins. He's met with truth, and he receives it, and he does something about it. And I love that about Joseph. Joseph's a great role model of a father. There's actually not a lot of great role models of fathers in the Bible. A lot of the men in the Bible end up really dropping the ball when it comes to fatherhood, but not Joseph. It says when he considered things first, he didn't just react, right? He wasn't just, you're pregnant, let's divorce. It says, no, he considered these things. And then the course that he took was the one that would attempt to save Mary from shame the most that he could. He said he would do these things quietly. There were, by law, she could have been stoned. She could have been killed. By law, he could have made a big deal about this and completely destroyed her reputation, but he says he wanted to do what he needed to do. Remember, at this point, he's thinking, she's been unfaithful to me. It's the only explanation. And so he still wants to treat her with dignity and respect, and still wants to do this quietly so that she might be able to go on and have some sort of a life after this. And then he's met by the angel who says, God is at work. And when he's faced with that truth, he changes the course of what he's doing. So it may be tonight that you see the truth of the Christmas story, and there's a couple of responses. Right? It might be that tonight, when you're faced with the truth of the Christmas story, there's a few responses. And one is that you might wish to accept Jesus as Joseph did, to reorient your life in response to this amazing gift. It might be that for the first time tonight that you say, I've sort of known the Christmas story, but I didn't know what a big deal it was. And if that's true, right, not just taking it on blind faith, but if that's true, then it requires a response from me. Because if my predicament was serious enough that God were to come in, as a humble baby, to eventually get to Easter, right? Christmas and Easter always go together. Come to die for my sins. It says that he would come to save his people from their sins. You know who's included in his people? Joseph. I hadn't really thought about that before. It says he's come to save his people from their sins. Joseph is one of those people. See, there's a lot of things that Joseph could do for Jesus, but there was something that he needed Jesus to do for him. He could care for him as a baby, but what Jesus needed to do was what Joseph couldn't do for himself, pay for his own sin. You see, if Jake goes out cruising in his car and gets a ticket, heaven forbid, says, man, Mike, I need some help. Like I got this ticket and I can't afford to pay it. And I'm in the wrong. I'm facing the consequences of the law, and I need some help. And I'm like, yeah, man, I'll cover your ticket for you. There's just one problem. I've got an unpaid ticket too, and I don't have enough money to cover mine. So I can't cover yours if I can't cover mine. That's our problem, right? If we're all in the same boat, if sin has separated all of us from God, then we can't help each other out. You can't say, well, wait a second, I've lived a perfect life, and so let me, pay for your sins. It's like, well, no, right? And it's interesting that ultimately we realize that we fall under a higher authority. Have you ever heard somebody say, you're not the judge of me, don't judge? You hear that all the time, right? What are we really saying when we say that? We're saying that you don't have the authority or the ability to be a judge of me. But in saying that, we're either saying that it's because I have the authority to judge myself, that I hold ultimate authority to be moral judge over myself, or we're saying that the authority lies somewhere else. Or we're saying that there's no such thing as morality at all, and that nobody judges because nothing's right or wrong. Well, nobody actually lives that way, right? Nobody actually lives that way. And so you take that option out. Well, is it true that we're all just judge of our own selves? Well, that can be scary too, right? That doesn't seem to be the case. Like if Hitler was like, well, hey, I feel like I was justified in what I did, and nobody can judge me except me, we would say, well, that doesn't seem right either. Like it seems like he should be judged by some standard. And so it must be that we're not the final standard of ourselves. Because otherwise, if you play that out, any one of us could justify anything. So where? Is it society? Society is the ultimate moral judge? Well, society is just made up of people like us. That's just saying that all these individual judges get together and somehow decide what's moral. Well, what if society decides that slavery is okay? Like, what if society all of a sudden decides that we should exterminate the Jewish people, as happened in Germany, right? So it's like, well, okay, so I guess that's not where morality comes from either. So who's judge? And all of a sudden we realize, well, it's got to be somebody who is above all of these things. somebody who doesn't fall prey to the same problem that all of us individual judges fall prey to. You start realizing if that's God, if God is the moral judge and we're judged by his standard of holiness, then how many of us reach that standard? Start realizing, well, speak for myself. I don't reach that standard. And I could give you a list of the reasons why I don't reach the holy standard of God. And so what happens if we're all in the same boat and we're all guilty? What if God decides to say, of all the people in this room, God says, I'm the only one who's perfect. I'm the only one who doesn't have to pay for his own parking ticket, right? So therefore, I can use that to pay for everybody else's because I'm the only one who is without sin. All of a sudden, it requires a response from us, saying, God, if you're the only one, if that's why you sent Jesus, then I can choose to accept that gift or reject it. But there's another application to this, right? So that might be you, but there's another application. Maybe you've done that. Maybe you've said, I've come to that realization that I'm not the judge, I'm not the boss, there's something above me, and I've come to Jesus and I've accepted that and his forgiveness. And so how does the Christmas story, how does it apply to me? Well, this truth also shapes the way we see people. Because if we're all in the same boat, how should that affect the way that we look at other people? If it says that Jesus had to come to save his people from their sins, and all of us are included in the people who are guilty of sin, how does that affect the way we look at people? Christmas teaches that we're all in the same boat, that God came down to offer this gift to all who would receive it. It shapes our relationships with each other and as a mission of the church, right? If this is true, just as all those other people came around Sarah and said, let's go out there and find the one that's lost, that's part of our mission as a church, saying if this is true and there's people who don't know this, then as a church, we're compelled to come around and to go out and to tell those who don't even know this truth. But it also changes the way that we live in relationship with other people. Because if Jesus comes in humility, humbles himself to come in love, to sacrifice for those who didn't even know that they needed it yet, should that give us a little more patience with the people that we maybe even consider enemies, right? That's the culture we're in right now. All throughout North America, you see people being divided into sides, us versus them, this political party versus this political party, these people versus those people, and there's this attitude of, you're either with me or against me. What I think Christmas teaches us is, if we're all in the same boat, then that changes. If we all need Jesus, if we all have the same problem, then it changes the way we look at each other. And I want to show you, because I think there's a great clip I want to show you. You may have seen this commercial. This is a commercial from a couple years ago, and it's actually based on a historical event during World War I, where the two opposing sides are fighting over Christmas. And on Christmas Eve, somebody starts singing, and the other side hears it, starts singing, and the next day, on Christmas Day, both sides actually break for a moment of peace. And so we're gonna hit these lights. It's actually this right up here. There's some lights. If one of you guys want to grab them right there. Check this out, because what a beautiful picture of what the Christmas season teaches us on how to treat other people.
Es liegt bewaffnet! Nein, Otto!
My name is Jim. Mein Name ist Otto. Pleased to meet you, Otto. Freut mich. Rose, she's called. Ist schön, schön. Danke. Happy Christmas. Frohe Weihnachten.
It's a great picture of what Christmas is all about. So we can pull some of those lights back up. And so I hope that we remember this season, that just as God came to us in humility, in love, in self-sacrifice, not because we were giving something to Him first, not because we loved Him first, but because we needed love. And He saw our need. And He came to us in a humble form of a baby. Every time I see a nativity scene, I see more than just, wow, what a neat Christmas picture. It's like a nativity scene says something radical about who God is. It says that this God loved us so much, we didn't deserve it, that He made the effort of coming to earth as a baby to one day get to Easter, which celebrates death, resurrection, so that we might know Him. And so this Christmas season, if you have not come to that place where that has become real to you, and you say, yeah, I think that's real, and if that is real, then what is my response? Well, I pray that you would work through that. And if you have questions about that, please come and talk to me. We'd love to get together and talk more about it. But it may be that that's a good reminder to you, but you have come to that place. But maybe there's people in your life that you're at odds with. Maybe you've kind of gotten caught up in some of this cultural stuff right now of seeing everybody who doesn't think the same as you or as your enemy, and you're realizing, you know what? If we're all in the same boat, if we all have the same need, if Jesus came to save us all, then my response to people that I disagree with or who are even my enemies should not be to try and attack them or to go war against them, but like the response of those people on Opening Ave who came to us and said, there's a problem, there's a kid that needs to be found, doesn't even realize the precarious situation they're in, we'll go with you. Together, we'll go and find him. Because the good news is that his parents love him enough to go after him, even when he didn't know the danger that he was in. Maybe that's your response tonight, is to say, you know what? I know people who don't know the power of this Christmas story. And maybe I'm the one to go after them and tell them. To tell them the good news, that they have a good Father who loved them enough to come to earth and, as a humble baby, to grow up to be a man, so that he, the perfect Son of God, would take on that debt that we owe, that we couldn't pay, so that a holy God could be brought into relationship with us. That's good news. That's a whole lot deeper than good old Saint Nick keeping a list of who's bad and who's good, right? That's how people viewed God before. A list of those who are bad and good, rewarding the good and punishing the bad. The Christmas story flips all of that on its head, right? And so, it's fine to. There's a lot of good things about Christmas, and our boys, they were so excited to be on the avenue and all that great stuff. But we know that beyond all of that, there's something much deeper that all of that other stuff pales in comparison to, and that's the truth of who God is and what He has done. And so Jake's going to lead us in a song. I always think it's great when we come to the truth of Scripture and talk about ask these big questions and think through it. It's good to take some time to just reflect on it. And so I'm going to turn it over to Jake. He's going to lead us in this classic Christmas song. And then after that, I'll let you know a few things that are going on that we'll dismiss. But take these moments to think through what your response is to the truth of what Christmas is all about. Jake?
The cool thing about these old songs, it's just one of those things about like singing together. It connects us together, and singing these old songs kind of connects us with the people that basically we just join in the tradition that's existed for the hundreds of years that these songs have existed. So I think that video that we watch is it's part of what makes it so powerful, is that there's just this way that these songs can kind of unify us across so many boundaries. So let's sing this together. Silent night, holy night, all is calm, all is bright, round John Virgin Mother and Child, holy infant, so tender and mild, sleep in heavenly peace, sleep in heavenly peace.
also love that James is able to share his gift with us to put a visual to some of the things that we talk about. So James, would you share some what God led you to do in this thing?
I was just thinking of Joseph, and how he had to wrestle with what was going on with Mary, and then when the angel spoke to him, that he knew. I wanted to show in this painting. I started off with this bridge, which is kind of, for me, it's like a cross, and this person is somebody that's looking at this story of Joseph and Jesus, and this is Joseph holding the baby Jesus. The light in the background represents the angel, and this cross is going forward, and this person is contemplating that situation, contemplating the cross. And I like how Joseph is on the cross too, because ultimately, like you were saying, Joseph needed a savior as well, as did Mary. And Jesus went and he took that cross, so that cross was in his future. So that's what I was trying to say.
Thanks for sharing. It's amazing. So I hope tonight has prepared you for the Christmas season that is coming up. Next month, we're going to gather December 16th. You can mark that on your calendar. Normally, we're the end of the month, but because of all the Christmas stuff happening in December, we'll be a little bit earlier. So December 16th, right here, where we'll get even more into Christmas. We'll look at Mary's side of all of this, and be in the book of Luke. And so invite you to be part of that. Mark that on your calendar. Also, there's a sign-up sheet at the back. I mentioned that opportunity next Saturday. Big Christmas parade coming down Oak Bay Ave would be a great thing to be there for. But also, we want to be a church that loves, participates, and serves our community. And they have asked us if we would come and you don't have to lift anything. It's these little tote bags with wheels, apparently. And we just roll them up and down, and people know to bring food. We're not going to be like telling people to empty their pockets. They know to bring food, and they collect tons of food, I think, in this every year. And so if you're able to do that, that'd be the commitment for that would be about 5 o'clock in the evening till about 7. And in the middle is the parade, and so we'd stop and enjoy the parade. But if that's something you can be a part of, that will be just a great way to participate in what the community is doing, and also to serve. And so there's a sign-up sheet at the back, if you wouldn't mind putting your name on there, just so we know how many to expect to bring. A couple other things. There's cards on your seats, every other seat, with envelopes on there. And if this is your first time with us, if you wouldn't mind putting your information, just whatever you feel comfortable putting on there, would love to just have a record of your visit with us tonight. But also, if you've got questions about who we are or anything else that we're doing, you want to be included on the email newsletter that comes out, then we would love to include you on that. I'd love to connect with you, send you an email this next week. And so if that is you, then please fill that out. There's a little box at the back middle table. You can just fill that out and drop it in that box, and it'll make its way to me, and then we can connect next week. Also, if you feel led to give, if you feel led to give to the ministry of what we desire to do as a church in the future, that money does not go to me. I don't take that as salary or anything. That money goes towards doing ministry and serving the community. And so if you want to be a part of that, really believe in the Bible, giving is just another way of expressing worship, right? And we give our time and we serve, and we give of those things that are important to us. And Jesus said, where your treasure is, that's where your heart is. The things you care about, you put money towards because you believe they're a good thing. You believe in what they're doing. And so if that's you, no obligation. But if God's leading you to give tonight, that's also how you would do that, is by putting that in the envelope and putting that in the box. Let's see, there's one more thing that I forgot to think of. I want to introduce you to one person who's going to close us in prayer. Lanny Lowe, Dr. Lanny Lowe. If you want to go ahead and come on up here. Lanny's a good friend from Georgia. He talks funny, but that's not because he's from Georgia, it's because he's from Arkansas. But we were on staff together for about 8 years during our time in Georgia. Lanny has been all over the world. I'm probably hard-pressed to name a country that he hasn't been to. And not just been to vacation, but been to do ministry, to serve. He's got some amazing stories from around the world. And so that's his position at the church in Georgia. He's in charge of all this ministry that goes out all over the world, but also church planting. And so Jonesboro, First Baptist Jonesboro, is our biggest partner in planting this. And our number one guy that is our communication through all of that is Lanny. And so grateful that he and his wife Isabel are able to spend a few days in Victoria. They've been to Victoria a bunch of times. Lanny actually, correct me if I'm wrong, but prayed throughout this community years ago.
Probably 8 years ago.
About 8 years ago, before Canvas was planted on the West Shore, before this was here, Lanny was one of those folks who walked these streets and prayed and said, God, would you one day start something here that we could be a part of? And so we like to say around here that you're part of a bigger story. You really are. You guys being here tonight is part of something that has been that God has been putting in the works for several years now. And so he's maybe even prayed for your house. I don't know while walking through here, but Lanny, we would be so blessed if you would pray a benediction for us. And so I've asked if you might pray not just for us here, but for Canvas Church and what God has called us to do in the future. So Lanny, would you pray for us?
So let's pray. Father, we come to you in the precious and powerful name of Jesus, your Son and our Savior. We're reminded of what you've done for us in the message and the music this evening, how we, while at war with you, you loved us and demonstrated your love for us by allowing your Son to come and to live and to die, to be resurrected. God, we look for it to return. Father, I thank you for those people who are gathered in this room, your children, who are part of your church. God, I thank you that we in this room are part of a much larger church, your body of Christ, that extends around this world. And Father, as we are reaching the end of this Sunday on this planet, reminded how millions and billions of people have called you Savior and worship you as Lord on this day set aside for that. So, Father, we join with your children and we join with what you're doing and ask, Lord, that you would pour out your blessing upon these in this room as they leave this place and enter into the mission field, that they would be endued with power from on high, filled with your Spirit, so that they might be useful in your kingdom and you would honor yourself through their lives. Through Jesus Christ, our Lord, we pray. Amen.
Thank you guys. We'll see you again soon.